It should announce it. You sure?
Yes, recording's in progress.
She's got the sound on.
Okay. Okay, we are recording. Yay. Welcome to the Cooperative Gallery, to the third Thursday Art Talk. My name is Peg Johnston, and I'm going to have a conversation today with Aubrey Clark, whose exhibit, A Glance at Legacy, is behind us. And we have a few people here, and we can get questions later. And we both just had our booster shots, so we're going to keep this kind of 20, 30 minutes, not an hour. So.
Yeah, so you're not feeling quite up to par.
No, I'm okay, but you never know.
I've just started to feel better on my way here.
Yeah, right. Well, adrenaline always helps everybody.
Yeah.
So what you're seeing behind us is A Glance at Legacy. And having done a fair bit of my own family history,
Yeah.
I can see why you use the word glance. Because, you know, you really can't pretend that you can do the whole thing.
This
Or
is
that you know the whole thing,
it's
yeah.
like a start.
Yeah.
So just a start.
Yeah.
And something, the choices had to do with kind of grounding everyone to something identifiable, like Riverside Drive.
Right, right.
And it will be easier for me to continue, I think.
Right. Now, in somewhere in your statement, I think you wrote that this kind of came as a crossroads for you between visual art and writing.
Right.
And can you say a little more about that? Because that's fascinating, because you've been such a strong visual artist your whole life, I think.
Well, when I made the choice to do visual art, I had been encouraged to write by my parents, but I felt that, for instance, somebody suggested a PhD in art history. I didn't want to spend all my time inside without moving around. So that helped to determine it. And then the words lately for the last several years just keep coming to me, the ideas. And, you know, I stopped what I'm doing with the visual work in order to take notes. My daughter gave me a gift for a birthday a couple of years ago called Storyworth. I had already been kind of launching some writing. It's so easy, though, to let it get interrupted. Yeah. So I hope that I can sustain the effort in spite of my big house.
And do you feel like there's a product sort of bubbling up, like a book or an article or another installation?
In these years, and there's more than just a couple, my mind is going, you know, all the time. And I had like hundreds of titles. And like, I don't like giving titles to my work, really, but that was sort of a way of trying to focus. So now I think I just need to begin, pick a subject, you know, and then get going. And I had originally thought that I wanted it to be my story, not about all the other people. However, I think these other people were important to me. Yeah. So they are going to be part of it.
Right.
My father already has done quite a job with genealogy, and
that's a help.
Yes. And
yeah, you almost have too much material.
I have too much material already. And also my son-in-law is very into it. So I have plenty of sources.
Yeah, right. That's its own burden.
Yes, it is.
Believe me, I know. I have come from a family that kept every scrap of paper they could find.
Yeah, we have notes. My mother, my grandmother, all these notes that I come across and don't remember seeing them.
Yeah, right. So let's go switch to the visual.
Okay.
And let's go look at the tree,
okay.
Which is beautifully done. You always work with Chinese paper so well.
I love it.
And
it's a passion.
Paper and
right.
so forth. So, and the shading of it, I had to touch it. Sorry, I had to touch it to say, is that really curved? You know, so.
Yeah, I thought the texture was interesting, and I wasn't sure if the texture. I didn't know what I was getting when I ordered But I
Right.
thought, this is perfect. It's
Yeah, it
very
is perfect.
irregular.
Yeah.
Tearing it was something else because all those fibers are quite heavy. So
Yeah.
I would get stuck every so often and have to cheat with a
pair
little
of scissors.
Yeah. And the first tree trunk I did, I tried to do calligraphy because that was my concept, but I couldn't control it well enough.
Yeah.
So I switched.
It's pretty absorbent paper, I would think.
I think it is pretty absorbent. I watered things down and quite kind of used acrylics as a, so that it didn't take over.
Right.
It's kind of stayed delicate. And then these Arborvitae prints were done on large sheets of paper, green, Asian paper, and several different colors, and several colors of ink. And I hadn't really been sure the whole way how this was going to go. I cut it by hand, but I didn't want to take out so much of the green that there wasn't any foliage.
Yeah.
So I had to kind of keep some more solid areas.
Yeah. So you put the ancestors at the roots, which makes sense to me. I know that's not how they usually work, maybe, but
yes, and I find that that's what nature does.
yeah, right. Exactly.
And to
The
tell you
newest
the
things
truth,
yeah,
there are, the old way seems hierarchical.
Yeah.
And more the patriarch.
uh-huh.
So I thought, this is my work, this is my take. I'm gonna switch it around.
Right. So how do these younger people on the top, how have they felt about this project? Have you gotten feedback?
Two of my three children were here and they were excited. They had all kinds of fun with it.
Uh-huh. Right.
And then my brother's daughter and his first wife also came.
Uh-huh.
And then that pulled in the carpenters. So we had,
Yeah.
a session with all four of them. And I have other nieces and nephews coming in the summer. God knows where we'll put this. But
Well, it was in your studio, so.
it can be, but there's no room for the,
Yeah.
no room to hang the cord.
Right. Oh, well, that's always a problem.
You'll have to put it closer
Yeah.
to the floor.
Yeah, that's why we have a gallery that has high ceilings, I guess. Well, it's impressive, and I love the triptych aspect of it. It's
I've always liked the way your eye makes the connections.
right,
It's not all spelled out. The viewer has to do something.
right.
And I like the space. I love space.
Yeah.
Even though we don't have enough of it.
Right. Right. Well, if you had the old stone opera house back, you could.
There you go.
You could do that.
And it's pretty deteriorated. I can't believe anybody's ever going to.
Well, they say they are. But we'll see.
I know.
So maybe we can take a look at the old stone opera house. It's over here, I think.
Okay.
Is that right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think. Yes.
Yeah. So this is two views of it. And
One being earlier,
right,
and this is more
more modern.
modern.
So I have to tell you, my grandmother used to go every single Wednesday and Saturday to the old Stone Opera House and see a show, whatever the show was.
A lot of
she
it
would
vaudeville, right?
Some was vaudeville, some real opera, some whatever, but she was like committed. And it was really a treat when my mother or aunts got to go with her. That was like a treat. And so that's part of my little history too.
Nice.
Where I heard that. And I always thought it was old stone, like literally made of stone, which it is.
Stone is our family name,
But then when I met you and we had that conversation, I was like, oh,
stones and weeds. Those are names on my mother's side.
Wow. Good earth.
Yes.
Good earth term.
So
Yeah.
I've often thought I could do something with that, but that's pretty literal.
Yeah, right. So you talked in your artistic statement a little bit about the interconnectedness of your family
With the community.
to the community, and I know that a major piece is Exterminator, whose anniversary we just celebrated a year or so ago.
Right.
And we just
I
took
wrote-
down that mural about
I
Exterminator.
know people were saying I was off in my own little world and didn't know what was going on. I finally caught on and ended up at the Temple Concord where Bill did some kind of a presentation.
Right.
But yeah, I wasn't really on it.
Yeah.
And it's only more recently that I want to go back in time a little bit to help connect, seeing certain patterns in families, whether it be mental health issues or whatever.
Right. Exterminator, for people who missed that big celebration, like Aubrey, was a racehorse, and her mom did a book on Old Bones, which is the name of
That's what
Willie
they called
Sharp Killer
Exterminator.
called him. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Thank you.
this isn't terribly interesting, but this is my cousin Rusty, and this is me with the back. I was like 3 or 4 years old.
That's the problem, is we don't actually like.
Yeah.
And I rode Peanuts. That was before my grandfather bought the land.
Much better. So here and here.
And I probably shouldn't tell this story, but I was on the property and some people said, and I hear you ride Peanuts. And I said, yes, do you want to see? I ran out into the pasture and climbed on with no bridle, no saddle, and immediately got bucked off.
Oh, little comeuppance.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
And I was embarrassed. I probably would have cried if I didn't feel,
yeah, right.
so embarrassed.
Well, this was not Willie Sharp Kilmer's favorite horse, but his favorite horse had an injury, and
Sunbriar.
they ended up doing this horse who won like the trifecta, no?
Yeah, he wasn't the favorite.
Not at all, right. So that's what made it such a come behind kind of
Yes.
thing.
And that seemed to capture everybody's imagination.
Yeah.
What did he win?
He won the Kentucky Derby,
He might have been a Triple Crown
I think
winner.
it was a Triple Crown.
Yeah, trifecta, I don't think.
Oh, that's the wrong word?
Yeah.
See, what do I know?
Triple
My
Crown.
father was also into breeding horses. And my grandfather never had horses that were particularly successful. I mentioned Miss Aubrey was a good brood mare. And,
Well, there you go.
there I go.
Yeah,
Right.
right. And Riverside Drive, we all know, was sort of, or at least when I was growing up, was where mansions were and where it was a pretty towny kind of place. But in those days, was it farmland, or at least by the river?
Well,
was it farmland?
From the hospital, which was very much smaller at
Right.
the time, that was all land to the Johnson City Cemetery and on both sides of the street. So the development on the north side was open fields also.
Mhm.
And, we rode all through there, and the racetrack was still there. So we used the track, but often would just take the horses down by the river. There was a path there.
Right.
So when you said something about, well, you don't want to put your 10-year-old self on a horse, I was like, I thought it was sort of fun to do it.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure it was a great childhood to be kicking around.
Yeah, and everybody wanted to be friends with me because they thought they might get
A
a
ride.
ride. Well, mostly, some of them weren't very smart about where to stand and got kicked.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
We should mention, just because you're standing in front of another
Excuse me.
really, you're good that right where you are, a really wonderful piece, again, with a sort of Chinese or Asian theme.
Yes, I'm kind of passionate about,
Yes.
first of all, there's always more space in Asian work.
Right. Keep
And
going.
so I like playing with the space. The negative space to me is just as it's important.
Right.
What do you mean by negative space?
like not object. These are like, call them objects, or and then this is open.
So it gives your eye a little rest and makes
Yes.
everything else pop.
So it has, even when the bright red, there's a little bit more peace to look at this. It can hopefully hold your interest, but it doesn't scream.
Yeah.
Now, I don't always work in red though.
No, but you did in this show, and those I assume were originally matted in red.
Well,
Or
yeah,
you matted
that's the red sisal that I
so
ordered.
you rematted all of these.
I did. They
Wow.
weren't even matted.
Wow.
I just made some selection.
All right, let's go over here and look a
Jeff
little.
at K Bella did the framing, and he did a great job. If I want to change the red at some point, I could.
Mm-hmm. You should come in front over here so she can catch you.
So
These are,
this house here, we're going to go along Riverside Drive. That's on the corner of Millard and Riverside Drive, and John Burns owns it.
right, I know it
It
well.
was a great house when my grandmother had it. He's done something completely different. It's no longer the comfy,
Yeah,
cushions and
and
sort
kids-
of more hard-edged.
kids running around.
Right, definitely.
Yeah.
And I threw in these because the horse reference was my grandfather's president of Hialeah. And that's a picture at Hialeah. And Churchill and his wife were friends. And so then I put the Nazi sympathizers next to them.
Even
That's the Duke and Duchess.
Oh, yeah.
I just sort of was having a little fun.
I know. I was like, who is that guy? I know him.
Pardon?
I looked at him. I was like, he looks familiar.
Yeah,
Yeah. Your lack of labels would have helped the.
I have another week. I couldn't, but will I?
Yeah. Okay. Now there's this house that I also remember.
And that's called Hope Lodge now. And we had a great time in that house. It was, my step-grandmother was very creative. And when I think about it, she was very patient with my boisterous cousins, running all around and getting into stuff. So we had fun. And this is an earlier picture. This is the way it looks today. This is the back.
Of this?
Yes, but
Wow.
this is not the way this looks anymore. It's got just kind of a porch here, and it doesn't have the car
Portico.
portico. Yeah.
And where is that located?
It's on Riverside Drive.
Is that the one you were talking about before?
Yeah, my
It's
grandfather,
where Lourdes is now?
That's next to Lord's, right?
it's next to the Unitarian Church.
Oh,
Right.
He actually sold the land to the Unitarian Church, and then the rest of this house and other land closer to the hospital were given to the hospital. So when my mother and father were ill, they got a lot of special attention.
Good.
It won't transfer over to me.
I just want to interrupt to say, if you have questions, use the chat box and we will get to them in a few minutes. But this must be
That's the
the
stables
stable. with
where
sun-bright-
my parents built the house that's at the bottom of Crestmont Road,
Right.
and it's right where the stables were.
Uh-huh.
And there's still a barn next to this house that my grandmother was very imaginative and wonderful at art and design. And she brought all this barn wood from
Oh.
Connecticut.
Uh-huh.
And I loved that house too, because you can see that there's a formality to my parents' house, but my grandparents didn't have that same formal,
Uh-huh. Aesthetic.
yeah,
Yeah.
it didn't. It was more about comfort.
Yeah. All right, let's, if we have a question,
One of the questions is,
and I come close to you, so.
is the tree piece the largest art piece you've created? What are some of the challenges of working that large?
So-
Space.
Space, right.
Having enough space. It was taller starting out because the ceilings at Alexandra's are higher. And then in order to transfer it and be able to work on it, I shrank it.
So is that the biggest piece you've ever worked on?
Yes.
Yeah.
For sure. And, you know, for a while we sort of discussed painting the wall red, but that didn't appeal to me at all because you have to then paint again. So this is the mobility of this makes sense.
Yeah.
Can roll it up.
Roll it right up. Yeah. Perfect.
And I could keep going if I felt so inclined with the different branches. I mean, when my brother's daughter and his first wife were coming, I quickly grabbed the pictures for his family. Those aren't solar etchings. They're just archival paper and, you know, enhanced. I don't think I can possibly do all solar.
So let's go back there and point out the solar, because I think people would be interested in that technique.
So the solar etchings is you get a very clear black and white photo. And Wayne, Alexander's husband, has his work cut out for him because he will enhance photos so that we can use them on the solar plates.
So you want it very contrasty.
Yes, you need high contrast, and some of them have aged. So one of the things about doing this is I have the plate and I have paper that will hold up better. So I'm approaching this in a more archival way, hopefully.
And so just to say one more thing, so you're with sunlight, you're burning it onto a plate.
Yes,
And then you ink the plate and then you.
Right. I mean,
Make a
solar is a misconception. It's misleading because it's really a light box. It can be done with the sun, but when do we get the sun? We don't have enough sun around here.
Right. This on this particular paper.
Yes, this is the same paper as
Yeah,
this.
right. I see that. It's kind of swirling around here.
Yes.
It's a little bit.
Too much.
No, it's a little bit. You know, Rod Serling, Twilight Zone-y in my head. You know, it's like.
Yeah, I like it because it's so organic.
And it works differently with different kids. You know, the kids look different.
Definitely.
And
some of them just didn't loan themselves very well. There wasn't enough contrast. So we just printed the best we could. Right. And actually, Alexander got COVID while we were working on this. And that took her out for a week or so. And she forgot a whole bunch of pictures. I shouldn't tell this online, but could have been me. I didn't notice either.
So I wanted to ask you before we don't have enough time to talk about the book, The Overstory by Richard Powers. It was one of my favorite books. And I read it a few years ago, but it's still with me. And there's not a sequel, but he wrote another one that picks up some of the same themes.
I want to look it up.
Yeah.
Well, the reverence for trees is folded throughout the book with, I would say there are like 5 fables about different people and what trees meant to them, and intergenerationally, how these trees, I mean, the first chapter or the first part of the book is about chestnut trees, which of course had an unfortunate end. I don't know if there are a couple here and there in the country. When he wrote that book, there was one still. But
and they're trying to mate it with a Japanese chestnut that's more resilient. But interesting, my father was part of some corps of arborists who had to cut down chestnut trees. And
I
was like always aware of chestnut trees somehow.
They were definitely on the land along Riverside Drive.
Oh, I'm sure.
And my grandmother's house, my great grandmother, who was on the corner of Murray and Maine, she had a huge chestnut tree there.
Well, Chestnut Street was filled with chestnuts.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, as was, I think, Grand Boulevard and some of the big streets.
And now we're dealing with ash problems.
Yeah.
Along with a big storm that took out a lot of.
Yeah, right.
So trees live longer than we do, and there is a lot we could learn from them.
Yeah.
the way they nurture each other and have sort of help each other making changes as they go in order to survive. So I like that idea.
Yeah.
And I also did want this to be dimensional because I was sort of trying not to just do two-dimensional flat because of the topic and just because I was ready to make an installation instead of two-dimensional. So.
Right. And another sort of personal question is finding your roots with
I love that.
Henry Louis Gates, one of your favorite programs.
I do love it. Yeah.
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 And
I love the way, I love the beginning along with all the discoveries they make with everyone, but it's are so artistic, that introduction.
Yeah, yeah.
Speaking of depth and dimension.
Yeah, I know. You'd want to be a paper cutter to do all that wonderful stuff.
I'm like, I may continue paper cutting. I kind of enjoy it.
Yeah, right.
Not to that degree though.
Did you find, and you don't have to tell us what they are, but did you find some secret stuff or things you didn't know in your research?
Well,
I know
to
it's
be
been very
honest,
researched.
should I broadcast
You don't have to tell us
family
the
secrets, but there is a history of some alcoholism and depression. And I think those two things go together, that people start to medicate with alcohol because of depression. And I had my own experience with that. I quit drinking like 38 years ago. So I was the first one, and I think I was lucky because AA had gotten more traction by then. I know my parents' generation, people would rather fall down drunk than admit they had a problem.
Right.
So
Well, and when you just see, family pictures, everybody has a drink in their hand.
yes,
And every,
yes,
social hour starts at 4.
right.
If it didn't start
And
at
that's
noon.
like,
Yeah.
I had friends from Chicago, and I know they drink, and I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do. I knew my friend drinks gin, and I didn't want to get a whole big bottle of gin. I got wine. So I have those little airplane bottles. She said, oh no, you didn't get those airplane bottles. So her daughter said, you can have those, Mom, and I'll have we have other stuff that John's band uses. I don't know what it's there. The brown stuff or whatever.
Yeah.
So,
Well, yeah, I know I've come up with quite a few little things. There's one comment that I wanted to just give to you about how wonderful the red is with the black and white. So just take in that compliment. Is there another one?
Yes, there is. The same person asked, what backing did you use for your rice paper that gives it such support?
I sewed this on, by the way.
Oh my God.
And I didn't sew every inch, but this is very stiff paper. And yet, and it also comes, I didn't want to sew it all for a number of reasons, including the fact that it creates a shadow, creates a little more depth.
Right.
And once I got the tree up and running, I realized that some of these branches were too skinny, and I wasn't about to do the tree over the third time.
Right.
So I just,
Is there anything else you want to tell us about this journey you've been on?
I think it's very helpful to see a big picture versus, say, the details that you've experienced yourself. Somehow, when you open up your field of study to more people, then you've got a bigger world to fit yourself into. I mean, I was a little bit of a rebel, which some people figured out, but I didn't want to rely on my family name. And I kind of got sick of the pressure. you know, privilege isn't all it's cracked up to be sometimes. So.
Yeah, right. Well, luckily Clark and Stone, and they're pretty common names.
They are, yeah.
Yeah.
And also I have a greater appreciation for the contributions that my parents made and my grandparents. It's like, it's not about me anymore so much, you know?
Right.
So thank God, you know.
Yeah, right. Right. Yes.
Another question. What is your next step in your art making?
What's your next step in your art making?
Well, I
wait,
have.
That's an unfair question, because once you do a show, you're like, oh, I
Yeah,
have to think about it for a while.
I did mock up of a tree that was much smaller, and I think I'm going to pursue it. Maybe use it as a colograph, and you know, play with that. I think the tree theme is going to continue. I have another tree book. I don't know who recommended it to me, but it's terrific. So if anybody's interested, I'll pass it on. Again, people finding solace and meaning from their relationships with trees. So
yeah, good topic.
Yep.
So I just want to say, if you want to see this exhibit in person, it's open this weekend, Friday from 5 to 8 p.m. Come, bring a glass of wine and enjoy the show. And Saturday from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. And
if you want to call me by appointment, I would come over. My number is 607-222-7544. That's my cell.
Okay. Now we got your number. The other thing, and this is a kind of an exciting announcement, is that we're having the Art of Ukraine show. I think pretty much everybody listening to this has been moved by the struggle of the Ukrainian people and what's going on in their home country. And so we wanted to do something. Karen actually approached some folks at the Ukrainian churches, and they were very excited. So we're going to feature some Ukrainian artists, but we're also inviting exhibiting and supporting artists of the gallery to bring in something to sell, and either a 50 or 100% of total donation, and then all the money will go to Ukrainian relief. So that is next Friday from also 5 to 8, and then Saturday extended hours from 11 to 6. So please come out if there's something that you could purchase that would help the relief effort.
That's the 29th and 30th.
Yeah, the 29th and 30th. So Friday and Saturday.
And my show ends the 23rd.
Right. Which is this Saturday.
Yeah, Friday it's open here, and Saturday.
Right. I think that's it, unless somebody has another question, but I think we've really covered it. You've done a nice job. Thank you.
Well, I've got to get back to work.
Apparently. Question from Joanne or no? Okay. All right. Thank you.
You have one more comment.
Oh, wait, one more. There's always one
And
more.
the person said, excellent concept, makes interesting history.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I agree. I felt like it came together in a way that I needed it to, instead of me doing all this fragmented notes here, notes there.
Right. Yeah.
Interrupting visual work to do it.
Yeah. It is wonderful when it comes together. So.
Yeah. And speaking of space, it's hung in such a way that there's space around things, which I personally need that for breathing room.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I did have more work, I'd kind of group them.
Right.
So.
Yeah. And you have other artwork in the show that is also really lovely. So it's you get your fill of history, but also you get some really lovely art.
Yeah, because I felt like I would maybe have to apologize that it really wasn't my work.
Right.
So
it's an
I was trying to
installation.
avoid those. It's an installation.
Believe me,
It's
on that road.
conceptual piece.
That's right.
So.
Okay, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you first Friday and next Thursday.
Thanks for coming. Thank you for coming.
Everyone.
Thank you for coming.